domain on YouTube. So that's the reason for doing that. So I think we are expecting a few other colleagues. I know I had a conversation with Graham about this, so we'll just wait to see how we get along. But Lindsay, thank you very much for joining us from Hyndburn Leisure Trust. You're going to talk us through your decarbonisation journey that you've been on for a couple of years now, with the support of Hyndburn Council and the funding that you've accessed to be able to transform. And this is the important bit, isn't it, Lindsay? So I don't want people to forget this. It's quite an old building, isn't it, Hyndburn Leisure Centre?
Coming up 50 soon, yep.
Yeah, so it just illustrates the potential of what can be done with the existing assets, which are typical of the ones that we've got across Lancashire. So if colleagues have got any questions, we'll just keep an eye on the chat. Keep those comments coming. But Lindsay, thanks for joining us today. If you'd like to introduce yourself, and I'll just hand over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Adrian. So I'll just pop a share on. I've just got some slides to share with people and help to talk you through and help you to see part of the journey that we've been on. Hopefully that is now come up on your screens. Can people see that first slide?
Yeah, we've got that. Thank you.
That's great. So we are on a journey to decarbonise leisure across Hyndburn area. So part of the proposals and part of the work we've done is led by the council, very much steered by them and their ambition to get down to carbon neutral. So what I'm going to share with you in the next sort of 10 minutes or so is what's happened in Hyndburn since 2021, what we've achieved so far and where we're going to go to next. And also it's important to just frame that in the context of our leisure transformation project. So back in January 2019, we started to look at the facility stock that we have in Hyndburn. And like you kindly sort of mentioned there, Adrian, it's an old stock. Our main facility is coming up 50 years old, and our other facility is even older still and was repurposed from a dance hall. So we worked with Sport England, Max Associates and Alliance Leisure back in 2020 to 2021. And we looked at what the future of our leisure facilities might be. And at that stage, we knew that Hyndburn Leisure Centre was going to remain and be refurbished, and we didn't know the future of Mercer Hall. So the focus of our work so far has all been on Hyndburn Leisure Centre because we knew that was a facility that we were going to have for the future. And as you can see there, two of the project aims that came out of our leisure transformation strategic outcome model work were to improve energy efficiency and also to maintain effective financial management, supporting the operator to have a more affordable, more efficient stock of facilities. So moving on for the making a case for investment into decarbonisation for our leisure facilities. There is a financial investment sort of case to be made, but the majority of the case is really around reduction of carbon. The council in Hyndburn, like many other areas, declared a climate emergency back in 2019, and looking at all the facilities that the council owns, Hyndburn Leisure Centre was by far the largest emitter of carbon. So back at that point, back at that lovely point of 2019, when energy wasn't quite so expensive, it was about £150,000 a year to operate Hyndburn Leisure Centre, and that was a combination of gas and electricity. And we did measurements early doors to look at what the carbon footprint was of the site, and it was estimated to be about 625 tonnes of carbon per annum to operate this building. So we all came together. There's many of us working on this project. To start with, it was the council and the Leisure Trust working with Sport England as well. And then we brought on Max Associates and Alliance Leisure as part of our feasibility work. And at that point, things aligned as well. So like I said just earlier, we knew that Hyndburn Leisure Centre had a future as a leisure facility in the borough. And Alliance Leisure pointed out the public sector decarbonisation scheme to us and put us in touch with Leisure Energy. So Hyndburn Leisure commissioned an audit of Hyndburn Leisure Centre, and that audit came back highlighting how we could reduce our carbon, and that really helped to put the public sector decarbonisation scheme application together. Council colleagues were at the forefront of writing that as well, alongside all their work in climate change too. And as the project progressed, Alliance Leisure brought ISG and Hensel Mechanical Services on board to deliver the capital part of the project as well. So many partners involved, bringing lots of expertise to the table. So the outcome of our work and the application of the audit was that we secured £1.98 million to do the decarbonisation of Hyndburn Leisure Centre. So a large amount of money. It did cover as well all the capital costs as well as additional expertise, pre-construction work, design work, implementation. And it was fully funded as well. So I'm not aware, I think that the scheme now may require some match funding, but at the time we were round one, so we received 100% of the capital costs and all the other associated costs as well. And this piece of work was stage one of our leisure transformation at Hindburn Leisure Centre. We have had a few further stages since then as well. The calculations early doors as well were that the expectation was that we were going to have a small financial efficiency saving as well for our energy usage. It wasn't much, it was about £20,000. That has actually changed quite significantly, and it's not because of the scheme, it's because of the world that we're living in and the cost of energy presently. So this is how we reduced it. These are the different measures that we put in place across the building. The 1.98 million covered this capital work. And you can see there the air source heat pumps were the biggest impact. So replacing our gas powered boilers with air source heat pumps was by far the biggest carbon reduction measure that we put in across the building. But there are other measures you can see there, including the solar, which was offsetting the cost of the electricity, the air handling units, the pool pumps, and also the BEMS system as well. The problem that we have presently with the BEM system is that it only manages half of the building, and so we are carrying out further work at the moment to kind of connect the two together so we can have a full operation of energy management across the building. And in totality, all that work aimed to save 462 tonnes per year of carbon, which equates to 74% of the actual overall usage at the building. So as with all projects, capital projects in particular, plenty of challenges. Timescales was the biggest because the first scheme wanted you to be complete within about 6 months. That didn't happen, and the project and the fund was extended about 3 times during the course of it. So ended up being about an 18-month scheme. We are a really small leisure trust. The council's a really small council as well, so we didn't have a great deal of capacity, but the council colleagues agreed to second one of my colleagues, Joanne Mortimer, for 2 days a week to work with them on this project, and that really did make a difference. It was a great investment for the council, and it was also really good for us to get part of the project and increase our learning as well before we went on to operate the new machinery. We've mentioned again the age of the building. There's lots of hidden kind of surprises when you're working with an older building. One of the big additional costs for the council was to replace the roof that we put the solar panels onto, and we also had to reinforce that roof as well. But as I mentioned, we knew this was going to be a facility that was going to stay for many years to come, many decades to come. And the council had apportioned some money for leisure transformation to improve Hindburn Leisure Centre. So that was fortunate that we had that funding in place ready to go. We didn't realise at the time of starting the project that we were going to need our own energy substation on site because of the amount of electricity we use here. We needed to have that in. Fortunately, the budget, there was some give because other areas of the budget were lower and we could afford to cover that. It is a substantial cost, so you're looking possibly around £250,000 for something like that. There were other parts of the building that were kind of overlooked. The squash court heating was something we hadn't considered, which we needed to come back and do at a later date. Of course, there was impact when we had to have some closures and some full closures and temporary part closures of the building. And at the time of this project as well, things like issues in the Suez Canal alongside Brexit and COVID were real issues. And it took us the best part of a year to get an inverter so that we could actually start using some of our solar energy. So things never go straightforward, and we are, anybody else going through this journey, we are more than happy to share our experience and learning as well. So the impact of that then, 1 year on, we were aiming to reduce by 74% when we first started the project. The initial project had a higher number of solar panels, so we reduced the solar panels slightly due to various number of reasons, but we did reduce by 68% in the first year. So a huge reduction on what we were using before. So 425 tonnes of carbon taken out of this facility, which is typically emitted 625,000 tonnes per year. And as you can see there, that's the equivalent of taking nearly 100 cars off the road or making a heck of a lot of round trip flights from London to New York. So big impact. We're also getting much better at understanding our energy. So this I took about 10-15 minutes ago. It's a beautiful sunny day in East Lancashire at the moment, and as you can see there in the yellow, nearly half of our energy for operating the building is coming off the main sports hall roof, which has got over 500 solar panels on it. So there are many times in the day where we do get a good proportion of our energy covered through solar. There's also many other times, especially in the evening, of course, where we use our battery storage or we're using off the grid, and the majority of our energy does come off the grid. So a few bits of further progress that we've made as well that we're more than happy to share with others. We've done some 3D lighting changes for our 3D pitch when we recently renewed that pitch. We've also launched our company strategy this April. And as part of that, we've got a theme in there for environmental sustainability. We've got a new facility in Hyndburn that will be opening next spring, and that has the same energy solutions as Hyndburn Leisure Centre. So aiming for that facility to be carbon positive. And like many others, we've been successful with the SPSF, and we've got some further funding for Hyndburn Leisure Centre, and some of that funding will help to bridge the old and new. So the new kit that we got put in through public sector decarb will get married up with some new kit from this as well, and we'll be able to manage how we use energy across our building much better. So this is just a screenshot of our strategy, and this is the theme that comes from the strategy around environmental sustainability. The lead for that is our head of operations, Joanne Mortimer. So Joanne is more than happy to work across, a network of others, sharing our learning. We know we've got lots to progress ourselves, but it's quite unusual to have so much kind of kit like this in your buildings, and it can be quite scary to bring it in. I know, talking to quite a few other operators when we first did this, there was concerns that we'd be closed quite a lot, not having the pool at the right temperature and having issues, and can honestly say that we haven't had any of those issues. The only minor issue we had was I think the first winter we'd had it installed, where we had -6 degrees temperature for quite a sustained period. And over a matter of days, we realised how to manually override any issues caused by that. So it has been operationally pretty smooth. And where we are at the moment in terms of our current focus for environmental sustainability is that we've just had our audit through Right Directions, and we scored 51%. We do believe that our decarbonised equipment has helped dramatically with that. So we think that it might be kind of covering up other issues that we need to address as well. And as part of that, we're going to be going forward and getting an environmental management plan put into place. And that will include a series of training programmes for our employees to make them much more aware. And of course, we've got the capital scheme to deliver with the council through Swimming Pool Support Fund at the Hyndburn Leisure Centre as well. And that is us. So I've purposely put on here my contact details, but above me, I put Joanne's contact details because she is by far the expert in our organisation. She is already putting a bit of network together across East Lancashire, and I'm sure she'd be happy for others to be part of that as well. But yeah, please do feel free to contact us. Just note as well, this image on that slide as well is the new facility over at Wilson Sports Village in Clayton-le-Moor. So again, if you want to hear or find out anything about that and the kit we're using there as well, please do get in touch. And that brings us to the end. So has anyone got any questions?
Thank you, Lindsay. That was really helpful. SPSF, could you
Swimming
just
Pool Support Fund.
Excellent. And that's something which I'm sure colleagues will want to know. In terms of the support from Sport England, did you receive any at all in terms of any revenue support with your, the development of your plans and your strategies, or any capital?
For the really early doors for this leisure transformation, we got some revenue support from Sport England to start the strategic outcome planning model work. So they supported us by giving us a consultant to do some early audit work on that, and then they put some resource, I think it's about £10,000 toward the feasibility study that we had done, which came up with those 9 project aims and much broader work and detailed analysis of where we were going to go forward with our leisure stock. So that was the revenue support that they've given us. Other than that, it's just been the capital work for the new facility, and obviously now the Swimming Pool Support Fund.
That's really good little pointer there, wasn't it, Lindsay, about the environmental sustainability actually being included as part of your facilities review. Yeah. Was there anybody specifically at Sport England who was pushing for that, just out of interest? I'm just trying to get a feel for it because it's one of Sport England's current priorities.
No, that came from the local area, so that was very much a council priority. I think that kind of was ahead of the new Sport England advice. So that was back in 2020, 2021. So it was quite early thinking, but it was more aligned to the council's climate emergency.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lindsay. Right, Michael, I can see you've got your hand up first of the question, so thank you.
Thanks, Adrian. Thanks, Lindsay. Quick one from me. So you might have alluded to this when you were talking about your building management system. Across GLL, obviously, we've got a big estate, over 250 leisure centres. So we've done a number of these schemes and had some that have gone really well, some that have gone learnings to be had, shall we say. I was just wondering, do you guys have any issues when you first turned all these systems on with the new sort of technology not talking to any existing? I don't mean like the systems that weren't covered, but did it all talk to each other right straight away, or did you have to do further work and be programming to get it to actually give you the energy saving?
So it talked to as much as it could, but what I would say is we didn't have anything for it to talk to. So so the state of the building and the work we're going to be having through the Swimming Pool Support Fund will now knit up nothing with something. So we didn't have something talking to something else, something old talking to something new. We had something new talking to nothing. So you're right in that it didn't do as much as it could do. So the next stage that we're going to be having Swimming Pool Support Fund money for will knit the whole building together. If Joanne was talking now on call, she'd tell you that in the winter we put the heating on, and in the summer we turn the heating off. So we've got far greater energy savings to come from the energy efficiency measures coming in through Swimming Pool Support Fund. The work that we got and the investment we got for public sector decarbonisation was very much around removing the carbon out of the building. It wasn't necessarily an energy efficiency piece of work. This piece that's now coming on board is going to help us to really fine tune the efficiency measures across the building. It was much more around reducing carbon. That was the focus.
That's great. Yeah, helps. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Michael. So colleagues on the call, I don't know if anybody, because we mentioned this earlier on, but obviously you accessed that government low carbon investment program a number of years ago, and you've started talking about match funding and such. Is anybody thinking of actually making an application in the next round, or looking at this in subsequent rounds? It'd be really interesting to get a feel of who's up for this. And potentially if anybody's going to include it in the next round of facilities review, because I presume there'll be an announcement in the autumn spending review around this. So really great to hear from people around this. Thank you. Michael, is that a legacy hand, or are you thinking of this for GLL in Preston?
It is a legacy hand. Sorry, it's not shown as raised on my screen. No, I think for us it's really interesting what Lindsay's spoken about, because we're in a similar boat where we run old facilities. It might be something that as this kind of gets a bit more near the time, might reach out separately and just see what the sort of recommendations were in the older buildings, because I guess some of the learning that we've had internally has been a lot of this stuff works quite well in a new facility with the modern insulation and all the modern systems, but the older buildings throw up lots of challenges. So I think we kind of need to sort of see where the sort of leisure feasibility study runs in Preston, and how long we think the buildings are both going to be standing and fit for purpose for before we make a decision on that.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Michael. And
hopefully that hand's gone down now.
I'll sort it. And but Lindsay, how useful was that transformation plan that transformation project that you put in place, to help to actually write the application?
We had to have it really, because I remember having calls with Chief Secretary Council where we were looking at putting this initial bid in. With 1.98 million sounded astronomical, and I was on a full council meeting talking about it, and some of the council said, do you really think you're going to get that? And I said, I haven't got a clue actually, because it was the first time we'd ever entered into that, but this is what it costs if you want to do that work. And because we'd done the leisure transformation sort of feasibility work, and we knew that Hymel Leisure Centre had a future. So like you, Michael, we didn't know. And when I first came into the organisation, it was, if anyone's been to Hymel Leisure Centre, it's a very old building, but it's a very large building, and it's a very well used building, and it's really well located. So it's got a lot going for it, and you would want to be able to refurbish it, because to replace it might cost upwards of 35-40 million. But without knowing that, the council wouldn't have invested in replacing the roof, reinforcing the roof. We couldn't have felt with integrity that we could apply for 1.98 million, not knowing if it had a future. Whereas at Mercer Hall, because we didn't know at that time, and we now do know, that's being replaced with the new facility at Wilson Sports Village, but because we didn't know it had a future or not, we said we won't put an application in for that. And that's, I think, for us, it was about having the ducks lined up and knowing that intel, that it did have a future and that we wanted it to be decarbonised, because that was the council's direction. Was much, it felt more comfortable for everybody. And there was a pot there for additional works, which I've just mentioned, the roof works and such. So yeah, I think you need that wider plan to know exactly where your stock's going to go. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really good advice, then, isn't it? As part of your leisure review, you know, how this is gonna work. Has it got a future? Is it going to be part of the mix? So thank you for that. Paul, did you want to just come in now? Thank you.
Yeah. So thanks.
Well,
Thanks, Lindsay.
Oh, sorry, I should have said Paul
two
Foster.
Pauls with their hands up.
Okay.
Go on, Paul. You go first.
Yeah, Pendle, we've had heat decarbonisation plans done for all our centres, and it's looking at around 6.5 million to get us carbon neutral. I think one of the challenges we've got is making sure that sort of council members understand that it's not an efficiency saving in this, and even when we've told them numerous times, you still hear them coming back about how it will save us money. Now, particularly with the air source heat pumps that are going in and the rates we're paying for electric rather than paying for gas, it really does need to be an understanding. I mean, and I think they've also got a bit of a shock about how much match funding we're going to need now. Just in terms of network upgrades, which I understand you can't apply for, I think we're looking at about £370,000 just to get the network in any sort of frame of being able to actually deliver these energy savings on site, plus then the required match funding that we're just waiting to come out. So I think there is going to be a little bit of a shock about how much is actually required.
So, Paul, how much match funding do you anticipate you're going to have to find?
Well, we've been sort of advised that it all depends now on the suggesting on how much carbon each individual element's going to save. But in the past, they've suggested at least 12 or 13%. But the more you put it in, the more likely you've got of success. Plus the network upgrades as well. So,
yeah.
So
there's the match, there's the network upgrades, and as you say, you're not necessarily going to be able to recover that 12-13% and the other costs from a reduced utility bill. I think that's what you're saying. Is that right, Paul?
That's right. Yeah, and then as Lindsay said, there will be inevitably things such as, the roof isn't strong enough or needs some work on it, so there's going to be those. However, they have committed now again recently, because we've been having ongoing leisure reviews, it is making it a little easier now. They've committed to keeping three leisure centres.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for that, Paul. So 6.5 million over 3. Paul Foster from Burnley, what's your experience? What are you planning to do?
No, I was just going to ask Lindsay or Adrian, is in terms of the low carbon investment programme, I presume that is it's continuing, is it, with rounds that are different to your circumstances then, Lindsay, in terms of match funding? Because it's not something that's been on our radar really for Burnley.
Yeah, I think as Pendle Paul was saying, you're waiting on the next round, aren't you? Is it still called Public Sector Decarb Scheme, or has it changed its name? Whatever they call it, might change its name, mightn't it? But we are in the understanding that it's still continuing, because the council's looking at it for other facilities, not leisure facilities, so lower emitters. But I think that it is there, and I would probably suggest find out who it is in the council that's putting anything together or leading on energy for its own estate, because this is the priority. And obviously they're doing things for residential and commercial as well, aren't they, each of the councils, but it's its own kind of focus. And our chief exec chairs the sustainable group for the district councils, and I think he's got significant passion about this. So for instance, the Wilson's project, when that was put together in terms of feasibility and costs, it didn't include a decarbonisation scheme, so the council used £500,000 from other funding, their own internal funding, to put an extra £500,000 into the pot to change up the kit. It was boilers and CHPs, which is what we've previously had, which is a cheaper option for sure, but it's not the right direction that they want to go in. So yeah, the scheme, as I'm aware, still is continuing, Paul, but it's just finding out who in the councils are either doing that work or could do that work with you.
Yeah, because obviously we're undergoing a leisure review, facilities review now, and Paddy Up Leisure Centre is subject to the leisure facilities swimming pool support fund. But obviously, so yeah, in terms of our stock, Padiham is the oldest one, approaching 60 years old now. So that is the main site that's going to be subject to the leisure review and the count, whatever the council's decision is to do with that. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see where we go with that one.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's a really good question, Paul, about how it's how the new government's going to engage with this. I have seen for the business deal that's still live, and obviously for the homeowner, the residential deal, that's still live as well. So we anticipate it's still going to be there for local government. But as Lindsay said, match funding's becoming more important. And I just wondered on that, Lindsay, have you seen a reduction in any of your operating costs in terms of things like maintenance or and anything else which is pointing, that you've not really brought out in terms of making this a more attractive deal for operators? I mean, is it new kit obviously lasts longer than stuff which is going to require ongoing maintenance?
Yeah, good question. I'll go back to Joe and I'll check and see whether we've tracked anything. There will be some things, I'm sure, especially when new kit's in warranty as well, and there's no cost for a period. One of the things that did get flagged with that though as well is that I don't know what other people's operating leases look like, but for us, if we've got major replacements, so like replacing the roof or boilers, such, that falls within the council's remit in Hyndburn. If it's a sort of just maintaining kit or just improving or repairing kit, that falls with us. And the air source heat pumps are something that we're very keen to make sure is clearly marked as something that is the council's responsibility because of the cost of them. If we're replacing them in 15 years time, it's not something the trust could afford to do presently. So I think that I'll ask Joanne to have a look into the general costs, like you just mentioned, Deirdre. That's a really good point, because the cost of energy, we did do some comparisons of if we were on the previous unit costs and the standard charge costs, what would it look like? And there was a small saving actually, but we've gone from 14p a unit for electricity up to 49p a unit for electricity. So our costs have gone literally through the roof. So so that is definitely not a cost saving. Like Paul said, we've had to explain that to people, even though we've got 500 plus solar panels on a roof, that doesn't give you enough energy to power a big leisure centre that's being used by hundreds of thousands of people every year. So there is something around the communications to separate out energy efficiency and carbon reduction. That's definitely something. It's a good point that Paul raises. I think that is something we all need to make sure we're really clear on.
Yeah. So I'm just reflecting now on Lancaster City Council's experience, and I'm just going to ask you the question, Lindsay, just about this. You've had an environmental audit. You're at 51%. You've got other opportunities. Is that an audit for you as Hyndburn Leisure Trust and that particular site, or is that considering in a kind of a one estate type model where you've got Hyndburn Council and you could be potentially making an impact for them?
It's Hyndburn Leisure Centre, so it was actually, many people might have had this. If you've got swimming pool support fund capital money, Sport England have appointed Right Directions to carry out these audits. So many of us have had them or are going to have them, and I think it's a bit like the moving communities. We've got the leisure recovery money and we've been given data. I think it's an opportunity for Sport England to start to understand the stock that everyone's managing. So that is just for Hyndburn Leisure Centre, but it's going to give us a framework for other centres as well in the future, and it's the direction we were going in anyway, but I think it's something that will just make us better. We might be worse than most areas. We might have got a better score than most because we've got decarbonised kit, but might be worse in other areas. So we're really keen to learn and pick up and improve. But we've generally got kind of support from elected members that they want us to go at the right pace with that as well, not to rush to try and get to 100, because they recognise that that's a big journey, a long journey But yeah, just to answer kind of clearly, it is Hindle Leisure Centre, that 51%, and the work will be focused on that one centre to start with.
Yeah, thank you for that, because it's interesting, isn't it? Lancaster City Council subsequently got electric refuse wagons, and their entire fleet is electric, and the Saltaire Leisure Centre is actually powering that entire fleet. So that tie up with the council and that one energy, so that one that shared infrastructure across one estate, that's something they're really examining. But they've got a separate solar array as well as the roof, haven't they, of the main building. So it's quite an outfit. Paul, thank you.
Yeah, just as a comparison, Padiham Leisure Centre scored 29% on that audit. So it just shows the difference, doesn't it, with that with those measures.
Yeah, and quite a modern building as well, Paul, isn't it? So that's interesting.
Well, I wouldn't say so. No, I mean, like I say, it's approaching 60 years old.
Or 60.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
It does have a lot of inefficiencies.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Colleagues on the call, any further questions or comments for Lindsay?
I don't know. Sorry, I'm trying to get my hand up again, Adrian. I don't know if it's
okay.
working or it's just not working at all, is it? I think just on the SPSF audit, we had one done at Fullwood, and sorry, Paul, to rub salt in the wound, but and it wasn't me. It was our general manager called Dave Folkes. We got 94% at Fullwood Leisure Centre, but it wasn't really around the work that was done in terms of any any upgraded kit or anything like that. It was largely to do with process and procedures and planning. That seemed to be the things that they were focused on, like the things that you can kind of control day to day, which was drawn out, and some things were quite tedious around when was the last time you inspected your chemical buns for leak testing and stuff like that. But it was very much around things that we weren't necessarily expecting, albeit we were quite fortunate that they sent us the pack in advance. But if anyone's got that coming up and you want to reach out to us, Dave Folkes in our team, we'd be happy to kind of give everyone a steer, because I can't believe the score that he got. We pulled that one out of our hat, I think, in Fullwood Leisure Centre, which again, 50 something years old at Fullwood. So if anyone's got it coming up, let us know. We can. Well, I won't personally, but I'll get someone to give you a steer on how they managed to get that score.
Brilliant. Thanks, Michael. And that sounds like a quite remarkable score, doesn't it? So anything that you could share with colleagues, I'm sure they'd love to hear how you did that. Brilliant. Thank you. Mark from Ribble Valley.
Thanks. It's just following up about the audits. We had our audit. I can't remember what we scored, somewhere in the 40s. But the thing for us was we got 25 grand, well, just under 25 grand for a pool cover from Sport England. We must have spent about 5 grand in staff time with this damned audit, really. And a lot of it was to do with the council's policies and procedures, some of which we have an influence on, some of which we don't. And I thought it was a bit naive of Sport England to think that that for the money that the money they gave us, that it would have any influence on the council in terms of what it was expecting it to do, because some of the things they were expecting the council to do required significant investment. And whilst we welcome the money that we got out of the fund, I thought the audit was more or less a tick box exercise. I was disappointed, really.
That's an interesting experience. Thanks for that, Mark, just to be able to reflect that back. Thank you. Lindsay, I've got there we go. Rossendale 29, Padiham 38. Yeah, interesting. Lindsay, I've got a further question for you, really, about, have you used this approach and your carbon reduction to actually engage your pool users and the consumers of your services? I mean, is it a cornerstone now of what you do, how you do it, your positioning within the marketplace? Does it make a difference?
Hopefully it will, but we're not yet there. So I think we did a very good job when we were going through the initial project, and we were quite clear at sharing the outputs with our customers, and you could see it and kind of, you know, experience it and talk about it in the centres. But we've been talking about this more and more, and we had a board meeting last week and mentioned it. So the screenshot I shared of the solar, we're looking, for instance, of having just live TV and reception at the front, actually showing that. So as you're walking in, just, you know, people can see what solar's coming into the building, and just looking at different ways of how we can communicate it. We think that from talking to some of our employees, who about half of them are 25 or under, it's more important to them. They're really interested in this, and we think that, you know, there will be customers as well, you know, some who are not interested at all, some who are very interested. So we're looking at how we do that over the next year. So that's something we're going to start with the solar and look at kind of growing on, because with something else we discussed is the recycling that we currently do is not very visible, because it's basically drop everything in one bin and then it gets split. So we prefer visually that our customers know that they can recycle, because it doesn't feel like presently they are. It feels like they've gone into one place. It's just another example, you know, how we can be more visible around our sort of sharing of what we're doing with our customers and stakeholders. So it's something that I would say we're fairly poor on at the moment, and we're looking to improve. So again, if other colleagues are doing some great stuff already, we'll love to share and learn from you guys, because I think we can do much more for sure.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lindsay. And are you looking at other income generation opportunities, for example, like solar charging or anything like that for cars who are parked in your car park? Are you preparing the ground for that?
There's going to be some electric sort of spaces, so there will be that function. The thing is, though, the amount of energy that the leisure centre uses, particularly at Hyndburn with the size of the pool, is that we're never ever going to have too much, you know. So whereas it's you know, they're overproducing, aren't they? And they can store it and they can sell it or use it in other ways. Ours is only a support toward sort of the total cost of running the building. There are 2 other roofs that we could consider, but we did look at one of them for SPSF, but at the time they weren't supporting any money for roof strengthening, so we didn't put in. I think they are now changing their mind and potentially offering that, but there would need to be a good amount of funding that came without too much match, because like Paul's explained, there isn't really, you know, there's no trade-off. It would take a long time to get the money back, so it would need to be factored in other ways. And our other main roof, our swimming pool roof, that's being considered, but there's a lot of plant on it, so you won't be able to get as much solar on there. And also reinforcing that might mean that we need to empty the pool, and we're not quite sure we want to do that with a nearly 50-year-old building. So ideally, it's kind of trying to trade off with what we could improve our energy efficiency and energy production through solar with, versus what actually impact that would have and what savings that might make in the future.
Brilliant. That's great. Thank you. Really, really helpful. Colleagues, any more comments about carbon and carbon reduction, people's plans? Anything people want to share? No, that's been great. Well, thank you, Lindsay, for sharing, you know, your journey, and for others who are interested, thanks for sharing where they're up to as well. Clearly, carbon reduction is going to be a major cornerstone of any facility that's redeveloped in the future. So it's really great to hear how you've done it, and to hear that there is some support from peers for people who are starting to look at their facilities reviews, their SPSFs, and any opportunities that they've got to work with the local councils to actually improve the efficiency of the buildings, their carbon footprint, and obviously the plant which operates them as well, to enable the provision. So really, really helpful. Lindsay, I know that you've got that new facility at Wilson's that's going to be open soon. Did you say that people are welcome to visit that? Is that something that you might consider arranging us just to come and have a look at it at some point?
Yeah, more than happy to do that. Yeah.
What's the date when you think that will be open?
Looking for it to be handed back to the council early April, so I suspect early May.
Early May next year. Fab. That's great. Okay, well, if colleagues have got no further comments, thank you for your time. Thanks for your input and your support to this, Lindsay, and sharing your journey with the rest of the team. Great, thanks for that comment, Mark. You've suggested there a working group to share best practice. I mean, is that something that colleagues on the call might be interested in? Some kind of working group, or just a group that shares experiences and just keeps people up to date? Yeah, that would be fab. Okay, well, we can circulate that across. Has anybody got any interest in potentially pulling that group together? If I just get some names together? Anybody interested in hosting it?
Adrian, I think that Joanne's already started that from our side, so we could look to extend and work with you on that.
Brilliant. Okay. So Lindsay from Pineburn's team, you might be able to facilitate that with other members of the network. That'd be brilliant. That'd be absolutely fantastic. Thank you. Great. Brilliant. Okay. Right, colleagues. I'll leave you to the rest of the afternoon. Just to remind you that this tube, because this video, because we've been recording it and I've given you notice and we've written out to you twice, this is going to go out on YouTube. So that's just how it is. So yeah. So if you missed the beginning of it, you'll be able to catch up on it soon, and I hope you can share it with us. But thanks for being part of it today, and I'll speak to you soon, and hopefully see you next month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks,
Bye.
Lindsay. Bye.